Hello everyone. So this is a session where I go into the depths of art and culture preparation strategies for the purpose of your mains examination. Uh, when you check it out on the internet, on YouTube, you'll find the art and culture sessions, the strategy sessions, the videos that you find more or less deal with both prelims and mains. They are just a list of books to read. They're just a list of websites to refer from and all. But I feel when it comes to mains, the type of preparation that you have to put in, the understanding of what main specific preparation is, it is very, very different from that of prelims preparation, right? So, we need to have a very exclusive session simply for the purpose of giving you the right ideas about how to prepare for art and culture for your mains, and this is what the video actually addresses. So, as a part of this video, there will be four different ideas that I'll be getting into. First is I want to make a clear differentiation between prelims and mains vision that you should actually have, right? Because you may have a different mindset when it comes to prelims preparation. You would have already attempted prelims, you would have had your own methods of memorizing certain facts for your prelims. But when it comes to mains, the preparation idea is totally different. So that would be the first part of the discussion today. Next is I'll go into the resource list. For mains, there is a certain specific way of preparing content for art and culture. It's not a set of 10 facts about each and every temple. It's not a set of five important data points about five uh, literary works produced in a particular court. So that's not the point of why you study a certain resource, right? So we need to actually understand what do I even mean by a study material? What do I even mean by a resource? That aspect is what will be addressed as the next part. And thirdly, we'll be discussing areas from where you can start practicing answer writing, right? So from the resource that I have pointed out, let's say you have finished your preparation, what is that you're going to practice as answer writing? Because you need to actually check whether what you have read is right or wrong. You shouldn't be facing a complete surprise in the next year's mains when you sit in the day of your mains hall, right? You need to actually have a preliminary test, a preliminary check as to whether the content that you have read is handy in managing questions or not. So where can you do that? That would be the third part of this discussion. And lastly, let's say you spend the next 10 to 15 days preparing art and culture in the way I have pointed out in this video, right? So you're spending time, you're spending the next 10, 15 days. So if that's the case, you have to make sure that what you read in the next upcoming days is retained until the day of your mains exam. It should not be the case where you read something for the next 10 days and then you forget it all. You read something, you're not able to utilize that anywhere in your other parts of prelims or in personality test, right? So everything that you put in as time, as in, when you invest time, when you invest hard work, it should pay you off in many other phases of this exam, right? So that's what I mean by making your preparation lasting, making your preparation useful. So these are the different aspects that we will be discussing as a part of today's discussion. So let's get in. First, let me give you an idea about the difference between prelims and mains preparation when it comes to art and culture. And for that, all you need to do is first go to a video which I have uploaded in the as a previous video. There is a video which is about how UPSC makes questions in mains difficult and challenging. So that's the heading of the video, right? And I'll share the link in the description box and in the comment section here. Just click that, and when you go to the middle of the video, you'll be able to see how art and culture questions turn out to be difficult, right? It's not that art and culture questions are something that nobody even understands the question. That's the problem that you will face with respect to polity. That's a problem that you'll face with certain landforms like fjords, which are asked in geography. But in art and culture, nobody faces a question of unfamiliarity with what has been asked. Everybody will know something about the question. But how well an answer is written is where there is a big difference between those who write really well and crack mains versus those who write mains and do not end up clearing mains. There is a good amount of difference created in the quality of the answers that is being written, right? That is where the difference lies, not in uh, even those who do not even clear prelims. When they look at an art and culture question of the previous year, they will feel that they have some idea about it, right? Because there is nothing that you're unaware of after preparing for 2 or 3 years for your prelims exam. So It's not an unfamiliarity. It's not an um, unpredictability of the question where the difficulty of facing art and culture question in mains actually lies, but it is in how well you end up managing and how well you impress the examiner. That's where the difference lies. So you should not feel happy that as soon as you see a previous year question in art and culture, you feel, oh, I have something to write about it. I know something about it. No reason to feel happy about. Right? It's only when you can write for 2.5 pages in a way that's very impressive, only then you have a reason to be cheerful about. Right? So, first, let's understand this difference between prelims and mains phase of art and culture preparation. In prelims, you simply have to read NCRTs. You read Nitin Singhania. Right? Either you would be reading Nitin Singhania, or otherwise, if not, you would be reading all your NCRTs for art and culture. Yes, that is good enough. That helps you in handling at least 50-60% of your art and culture question asked in prelims. Because in prelims, the questions asked are just superficial level facts. You only need to have heard about the fact in a particular context and you'll be able to get it right. If you would have only known that a Pallava king by the name of Mahendra Varman has written this book called Mata Vilasa Prahasana, you could have got last year's question from art and culture right in prelims. In 2025, the question asked was, which of the Pallava ruler had a title Mata Vilasa? Right? So associating Mahendra Varman with Mata Vilasa Prahasana could have got that answer right, because out of the 4 options, again, one of the options is Mahendra Varman. That's all you need. You need only factual awareness. You should have seen from the books, you should have heard in the lectures. That is good enough to get a few art and culture questions in prelims right. But in mains, that's not at all sufficient. Because you have to know the language in which art and culture has to be appreciated and how it should be expressed. Right? Let's say you watch a movie, you come out of the movie hall, and somebody asks you, how is the movie? Either you can say, yes, it was good, bad. That is like prelims answers. But when you go into the details and you say, yes, the character development was very thrilling, right? And I like the placement of songs in certain in locations of the movie. Okay, so when you start narrating your visual experience, when you start narrating and describing in words how what is that you perceived out of that movie, that is what is mains preparation, right? It is possible for anybody to say, I like the movie, I don't like the movie. But it's not possible for everybody to give a review of the movie, right? Going into the technical aspects of the movie, going into the creator's mind, what they are trying to portray in that movie. That's exactly what mains preparation for art and culture is. Right? You need to describe your emotions, you need to describe your appreciation when you look at the Pallava stone art, or when you look at the difference between different South Indian temples. You can all of these conform to Dravidian style of temple making, but what is the different variations that you find in each and every temple? You need to be able to express that in words. You have to talk something about the pillars. You have to talk something about the roof, right? So there is a fair deal of elaboration. There is a fair skill of language competency which comes in when it comes to your mains preparation. And the resource that you read from should also help you train yourself in such verbal expression. Right? So, when it comes to prelims, simply knowing who is what, who has created what, right? What is the time period in which a particular work was created? This is all that you need. But in mains, no. So, I'll give you an example. Let's say for prelims, you read Dandin was a scholar who lived in the court of Pallavas. He produced literature like Dasakumara Charitam, Kavya Darshan. This is all you need to know. Right? But when it comes to mains, you may have to explain why Dandin was a great Sanskrit scholar. Because the question could be, discuss Sanskrit literature as it was produced in different regional kingdoms across India. Right? Or it could be Sanskrit literature produced in different regional kingdoms depicted the society of the times. Elaborate. Right? In that case, you have to explain what is the subject matter of Kavya Darsha. You have to explain what is in Dasakumara Charitam. You'll have to explain the lipogram. Lipogram is basically a genre. It's a style of writing which was followed by Dandan. You need to know what is that. And you need to explain how he was able to bring the rasas, the emotional experience in his work. Right? What kind of a moral messaging do you find in the work of Dasakumara Charitam? So basically, you need to get into the depths. Your preparation cannot simply be about awareness. Your preparation can simply not be about knowing what is what, who has written what. It should be something about why has some work, why was it even created, and what was the writer, creator of that art trying to convey, right? So going into those specifics is how your mains preparation differs from your prelims preparation, because for both prelims and mains the topics are just the same. There is no difference. For example, at least for polity, you will find the difference between prelims topics and mains topics. In mains, you do not ever have to read official languages provision in the constitution. For mains, you don't have to read fundamental duties, right? But when it comes to art and culture, for both prelims and mains, the topics are the same. There is no difference at all. Okay, so it's the same content, but what do you do beyond that content that you read for prelims is what differentiates your prelims preparation from your mains preparation, right? So that's why I've written here, in prelims, you only need read shallow facts. To read shallow facts, even Nitin Singhania is good enough if you can memorize them and keep them in your mind. To read and get to know those shallow facts, even NCRTs are good, more than enough. Okay, and in addition, you will be facing your test series, you look at PYQs, all of that is good enough to get exposed to these shallow facts. But the point is, they are so shallow that you'll forget it within a week, within a month, because you're not actually appreciating the work. You're simply getting to know what is what. So definitely, your memory fails you after some time. So you have to keep on revising art and culture again and again and again for your prelims purpose. But that's not the case when it comes to mains. Because in mains, you go to the depths. You start exploring the reason behind certain kinds of temples produced in the Chalukyan kingdom. Or you go and start understanding why so and so literature was produced by Dandan in the court of Pallavas. So when you go to those depths, you actually understand the undercurrents. You understand the purpose behind why the artwork was created. So you'll always remember it. You'll never understand. You'll never forget that Dasakumara Charitam by Dandan. It was produced so as to give a life lesson for the princes of the upcoming years. Dasakumara Charitam. It means the story of 10 princes. Right? It's about the story of 10 princes who get 10 to 10 different bad habits. So when you know this aspect to it, when you know the theme of this play that was written, you do not even have to revise it again. It just simply stays in your memory, right? So that's why I have written here, for mains, it's more about studying meaningful facts. Okay, there is a deep study that is involved in that, right? Let's say for prelims, you only read something like, okay, in Malwa, it's a regional sultanate which emerged after the Delhi Sultanate started becoming weakened. Right after the Tughlaq period, the Delhi Sultanate becomes weaker and weaker. So you find regional sultanates emerging everywhere, in Malwa, in Gujarat, in Bengal, in Jaunpur. You have regional sultans emerging, right? And you can name a few cultural works that were produced in these sultanate, right? That's prelims level of preparation. But when it comes to mains, let's say you take the case of provincial architecture of Malwa. You go into some 3 or 4 different monuments. Kamal Mola Masjid, okay, the tomb of Hoshang Shah, Hindol Mahal, Jahaz Mahal. So these are some cultural architectural wonders that were produced in Malwa, regional sultanate. So when you go into them, you see their features, you'll be able to understand certain aspects that differentiates Malwa school of art and architecture from other sultanates. Similarly is the case with Gujarat as well. So since you go a bit deep, you not only know what are the architectural outputs of the sultanate, you also go and study some features of those monuments. That way, your memory is actually even more pictorial. It's more long lasting, right? Since you study it for an extended period of time. In prelims, you take Nitin Singhania Malwa School of Art, 5 minutes. That's the content that you read. But here you read for 50 minutes. So 10 times more content you read, 10 times more depth you actually start exploring. Right? It is to make this kind of a deep exploration. That's why I'm trying to make this differentiation between prelims and mains. Otherwise, you would be under the mistaken impression that, okay, let me take the same Nitin Singhania and start reading about Malwa architecture. No, you are not preparing for mains. You're once again wasting time in reading in a particular way which will not help you in long term retention, which is useless for both prelims, which is not at all useful for your mains. Right? So try to understand this basic difference between prelims and mains preparation. Right? In prelims, superficial level of study, just preliminary exposure to what is what, who has produced what, who are the different writers who lived in which king's court, right? So who was the author of Tabaqati Nasiri? This is how you actually read for prelims. But in mains, you try to understand what is Tabaqati Nasiri talking about Delhi Sultanate, right? What is Amir Khusrau's work talking about the history of Delhi Sultanate? So you go into those specifics, correct? So understand there is a certain level of depth that is required when it comes to preparation for art and culture for mains, right? It's not about just superficial awareness. So you need to know from where that depth can be acquired. So I have negated NCRTs and Nitin Singhania for this purpose. Those books cannot help you get those depth, right? So that brings us to the next part of this discussion where I'll discuss with you about what are the resources that you'll have to follow when it comes to preparing for mains for art and culture, right? So you have to understand that there are only 5 themes in art and culture, right? 4 broad major themes and 5 miscellaneous topics, right? What are those 4 broad areas? Architecture. See, first of all, in art and culture, every year there are at least 3 questions asked in mains, or there are years in which even 4 questions have been asked in mains. Minimum 3, maximum 4, right? And out of this 3 or 4 questions, definitely 70% of the questions will only be from these 4 categories. What are they? From architecture, intellectual, philosophical developments, right? You have different philosophical schools, Upanishadic development, Buddhist ideas, Jain principles, Hindu religious system, how did it transform over time, right? So these are some developments. These are some ideas, areas from where questions can be asked. And in addition, literature. So starting from Vedic literature till Mughal literature. So this is our time frame that we have to cover, right? And Indian accomplishments in science, in cosmology, in botany, in medicine, mathematics. So that's another area. Indian, that's what we call as Indian heritage, intellectual developments, right? So just from these areas, see, we can easily narrow down areas to prepare, and then you have to simply read each and every area for 2 or 3 days. Only thing is you should read from the right material. If you can only read from the right material, spend 2 or 3 days on each and every theme, your work for art and culture is actually completed for 70 to 80% of your preparation. And to cover these miscellaneous areas, terracotta art, sculptures, painting, music, dance, for this, I would simply suggest your NCRTs. You have your history NCRTs, right? R.S. Sharma for ancient India, Satish Chandra for medieval India. At the end of every chapter, you have art and cultural developments of this particular period. So that's one NCRT that you can refer. In addition to that, you have a separate NCRT simply for art and culture, right? So those NCRTs can help you manage this 5th unit, this 5th part, which is about miscellaneous topics, right? But when it comes to the other 4 parts, the other aspects of art and culture from where 70 to 80% questions are asked, for this, Nitin Singhania is not the resource to read. Okay, NCRTs is not the resource to read. But then, what will you even read then? Well, just look at this difference that I have written here. NCRTs and Nitin Singhania for your prelims, but for your mains, I say you make your own material. There are just 100 different websites, there are just 100 different books from where you can make your own material. But make sure you read at least one of them properly. And let me give you an idea about what, in my opinion, is considered to be a good reading material. So let's say there's a PDF that you can see here on the screen. So what is this? This is basically a one chapter that has been taken out of the 10 chapters from a textbook. The name of the textbook is A Wonder That Was India. That's written by A.L. Basham. Right? So this is a textbook that students of history optional would read for preparation for their optional paper, for paper 1, where you have both ancient and medieval paper. I'm not asking you to read the entire book. right? All you need to do is just read one chapter which has some 20 to 30 pages, and that chapter is about art and culture, right? Just read this chapter on arts, architecture, sculpture, painting, music, and dance. There is a chapter like this. The next chapter is about literature, right? So, in fact, I would say if you're really wanting a good book to read, if you feel that Nitin Singhania reading is not written to enough, if you're not able to recollect and remember things in the longer term, I would simply say just get these two chapters from this book. One is on arts, other one is on literature, right? Have a first level reading. Have a reading of these two chapters. If you wouldn't do the reading of two chapters, at least read this one chapter on arts, right? So I'll share this PDF, this extracted PDF, which I have cut out of this A.L. Basham book. I'll share it as a cloud link, and I'll give the link in the description box below, in the comment box below, right? Please download this document and try going through it. You will have some hardships. You may feel that reading it is slightly difficult because the English is continuous. It's not point format like what you find in Nitin Singhania. So those who are not familiar with the style of reading may find it challenging, may find it difficult to read and understand things. But once you start making sense of what is there, you'll actually understand the purpose behind why have I even shared this content to you. The reason why I have shared this document to you is so that you can go through these highlighted paths, right? I have highlighted a lot of paths in this document. So it is these highlighted paths which are actually what leads to developing a sense of appreciation of art. These are not points to write in the body of the answer. That you will find in the middle. In the non-highlighted parts, these are the points that you can write in the middle of body, right? But all these orange highlighted parts, these are what forms a nice introduction. This is what forms a conclusion. This is what projects to the reader, whoever reads your answer, that you have a knack with language. You have a knack of explaining how to look into architecture, right? It is easier said than done, but you have to read these highlighted sections. Only then you'll be able to perceive the importance of what I'm saying. And I'll even show you a few aspirants' answer sheets, right? So by showing that, you'll be actually familiarized with what do I mean by appreciation. The sense of appreciation develops only when you read good books, not simply some market materials simply for the case of prelims art and culture. That doesn't develop you that sense of appreciation, right? So this is one such good resource. This is one such right resource, because the time that you spend reading this resource builds in you a sense of awe. It builds in you a sense of admiration for what Indians have produced in the past. No wonder the name of the book itself is A Wonder That Was India, right? So Basham, an Australian who was very fascinated with India, has made a study of India. So he has pointed out our great accomplishments Indians have had in the past, right? So there is a sense of admiration for art throughout his writing. And that sense of admiration is what you will have to explain in your answer as well if you want to make a very favorable impression in the minds of the reader. Anybody can simply write 5 points of cave architecture, right? But going beyond that and making an impact in the mind of the reader, that comes only when that sense of appreciation is conveyed. That is the reason why some answers fetch 5.5 marks, whereas a few other aspirants, the same points will fetch 4.5 marks. There isn't any difference between the points, but the introduction matters. Conclusion is so captivating, right? That is where the difference can be created. The sooner you understand this philosophy of Mains is not a knowledge game alone. It's an impression game. The knowledge game is over with prelims. From Mains to interview, personality test, it's all about the impact you create on the reader when he reads your answers, the impact you create on the listener when he listens to your answers, right? So that is why it is important that you need to read from the right reading material. So I would say for architecture and for literature, this book A.L. Basham would do a lot of justice to your mains preparation. Okay, so just a sample extract from this book is what I'll be embedding it as a cloud link. Just download it and go through it to perceive the importance of what I'm trying to tell you, right? Fine. So now, let's say you have finished reading from such kind of resources. So A.L. Basham is a good resource for 2 chapters covering architecture and literature, right? And for religion and philosophies, uh, even your NCRTs are good enough. Your R.S. Sharma NCRT can be a very good resource to understand about Vedic religion. How did it evolve from early Vedic to later Vedic, right? And when it comes to Buddhism, Jainism, and Puranic Hinduism, for all of these as well, R.S. Sharma is good if only you can top it up with A.L. Basham, right? See, the chapters in A.L. Basham are arranged in such a way that the first chapter talks about political development starting from Indus Valley civilization to Vijayanagar Empire. The next chapter talks about social development starting from Indus Valley civilization to Vijayanagar Empire, right? The third chapter talks about religious development starting from Indus Valley civilization till Vijayanagar, right? So it's like you have to read this entire chapter on religion. So when you read this entire chapter on religion, you will be able to actually understand very clearly about how the early Vedic religion, the Hindu Brahminical religion, had transformed across ages, across phases, right? So I would say for architecture, literature, religion, and philosophy, and also for intellectual developments, for example, accomplishments of Indians in astronomy, in astrology, in mathematics, physics, medicine, what is the reading resource to read? The last chapter of this book, Wonder That Was India, written by A.L. Basham. Right? So basically, you may feel that what is that? I'm asking you to read the entire book. Actually, I'm asking you to read 50% of the book. Read it, reread it again and again. If you can, if your English is manageable to the extent that you can read this book and understand, then don't hesitate at all. I don't see any other better single book that gives you a good idea about all of these topics. Of course, this is only addressing the Hindu culture. Entire Islamic culture is not addressed in this book, right? So Mughals, Delhi Sultanate, provincial architecture, provincial literature, none of that you'll find in A.L. Basham. This is just about the Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain culture, right? So for that, this book is good read. And for when it comes to the Muslim period, I would say just stick to Satish Chandra. Whatever you find as cultural development Satish Chandra, that would be your first level of reading. Okay, so this is the reading material that I would be prescribing when it comes to preparing for art and culture, not Nitin Singhania. All right. So you have to read at least a sample. That's why I'm giving you the cloud link. Read a sample, then you will be able to understand why am I even asking you to read the 50% of this book. Okay. You will find that you will develop so many things when you read this book. Okay. And students who have read from the book, they are the ones who have written all these wonderful answers. And let me walk you through this to make you understand why I feel these answers are really wonderful. But before that, let's say you have finished reading this entire book that I have suggested to you. After that, where will you practice answer writing? How will you test yourself against questions of UPSC standard? Look nowhere else. Just go to history optional question bank, right? You have certain PDFs which has a compilation of all the questions asked in history in the last 30-40 years. So look into that question bank for select areas, right? So simply for temple architecture, there could be some 20 questions asked in the previous years, and out of 20 questions, 2 or 3 questions would be of the same type. Another set of 2-3 questions would be of the same type. So if you see, there are some 10 questions in the domain of temple architecture, right? So that is what I have displayed here on the screen. Okay, look at the type of questions asked. One is trace the origin and development of temple architecture in India with reference to regional styles and variations. Right? So you have to talk about Dravidian style, Nagara style, Vaishara style, but even within that also you have to talk about in Nagara style, what are the different variations? In Dravidian style, what are the different variations? Then you have a question on development of temple architecture in Pallava period. That's a type of a question that was asked. Right? So then there is a question asked on architecture of Vijayanagara Empire. Okay, so after you have done your minimum reading from the book that I have referred, now what you do is look at previous year's questions from the history optional question bank pertaining to art and culture. Only think about answers for those questions. If you have a lot of time in your hand, you may even try writing an elaborate answer for those questions. The choice is yours. But the litmus test of whether what you have read is useful for your mains or not, will it be useful in the upcoming years or not, and to even know what more questions are yet unasked in GS mains, you don't have to look anywhere other than PYQs of history optional, right? I'll give you a proof of that. See, this is a question asked this year in mains, in 2024 mains. This was a question asked. Estimate the contribution of Pallavas of Kanchi for the development of art and literature of South India. Right? A similar question is there in history optional question bank, which has been asked in multiple different years. Look at this. Discuss the contribution of Pallavas to South Indian art. Was this art wholly indigenous? This was asked long way in 1979. Okay, so I would say that when it comes to art and culture, history as well as geography, it's very simple to prepare. It's very simple to be on your toes and be very guarded, because you have your optional question bank. You simply have to look at what more questions from the optional question bank are not yet asked in GS and mains. Just prepare answers for that, right? And I'm very sure preparing from AL Basham will give you very good points to manage most of these questions, right? So this is what you should be doing next. Check whether what you have read helps you in handling optional level art and culture questions or not, right? So when you write your answer, I would say that your answer should have these four attributes. These four aspects should be there in your answer that you write. Okay. So from the first slide that I started my discussion till here, whatever I have told you is simply directed to give these four attributes to your preparation. Right? When you write an answer, it should convey a certain sense of appreciation. It should not be bland facts, plain stating of facts. No. I'll show you some examples here. So this is a question for which two different aspirants, they have written an answer. Right? The question is, discuss the evolution of tomb architecture in under different sultans in India. Right? All of them, they have written a lot of points talking about Ghiyazuddin Tughlaq's tomb, Iltutmish tomb, Lodi tomb. They have written a lot of points. But what do I mean by a sense of appreciation present in the answer? Let me read it out. So this is from one of the aspirant, where it's mentioned that tombs are an important feature of Indo-Islamic architecture, and erection of tombs in India display a syncretic fusion of Persian and indigenous elements of architecture. This is what I mean by appreciation. Detailing. Okay, this is not a fact. This is not about what kind of dome is used in the tomb, whether straight walls or whether sloping walls is used in the tomb or not. That's the body part of the answer. But an appreciation is what this is. The grandeur of the tomb is considered to be a reflection of the majesty of the king's reign. Okay, this is what I mean by the aesthetic aspects which you simply cannot get from Nitin Singhania or NCRT. And this is what has to be present in your answer. Your answer, when you write, should have these four aspects. It should have the right appreciation. It should have the right terminologies and words and vocabulary specific to art and culture being used. Right? Wherever possible, it should incorporate diagrams, and exact references should be mentioned. You cannot simply say that South Indian temples are very big and monumental. You have to say the Vimana, the Gobra that you find in so and so temple, in Brahadishwara temple. It's a grand monumental testimony to the capacity of Dravidian architecture. Right? So specificity of examples makes your writing more targeted, more precise, more scoring. So let me show you some sample answers. Right? So look at the next aspirant. Thus, tomb architecture in India started from rudimentary forms, but later evolved into more exquisite structures. Right? Combining elements of Persia, India. Right? So this is what I mean by the aesthetics. Right? This language style, this command over English should be brought in your answers when you write art and culture answer. For science, this does not even matter at all. But for art and culture, yes, that emotional appeal matters. Right? So next aspect I have mentioned is your answer should have the correct terminologies. Okay, what do I mean by terminologies? Let's say you look at this image. Can you describe any of these aspects? What is this called as? What is this called as? What is this called as? And how will you describe this pillar? Don't call this as a pillar. There is a particular shape to this pillar. And even this room has a particular shape to it. This entrance, you cannot call it simply as an entrance. There is a name to this structure. Right? This is what is incorporated in this answer. Plain, gable, and rectangular hall of the cave indicated primitive stages of masonry. Okay, what is she trying to write? The question is, discuss the evolution of cave architecture in India. And for such a question, these are the right terminologies to be used. The apsidal plan of the Chaitya. I'll tell you what it is. This shape of the hall. So when you go to Maharashtra, you have a place called Karle. Right? Karle is where you have a lot of Buddhist caves. Chaityas are constructed for the monks to reside. Okay. So Chaityas, they are shaped in a particular way. They are shaped like a horseshoe table. Right? It's a horseshoe room. But horseshoe is not the right word to be used. The right word is apsidal plan. That is what she has brought it. That is what I meant by use the correct terminologies. Right? So similarly, this entrance structure is what is called as gable. The entrance of a cave is in the shape of a horseshoe gable. Okay, so gable is the entrance which allows light to enter. You can also write the entrance has a horseshoe shaped structure. Everything is a structure, but this has a certain name to it. Similarly, the structure of a roof, this is a ribbed in structure. Like a rib cage, you have numerous stone ribs going through. Right? So conveying the ideas with the help of the correct terms and words and labels matters a lot in impressing the reader about the kind of answer that you have written. So focus on that. That should be also a part of your answer. So just take a screenshot of this particular slide. Make sure each answer that you write on art and culture contains these four aspects, attributes. Right? And when it comes to architecture-based questions, you can always draw diagrams. So this is the diagram that you can draw to depict Nagara school of architecture. So this is Artha Mandapa, then you have Mandapa, then you have Antarala. Lastly, you have the Garbhagriha, over which you have this Shikara. So this is the cross-sectional view. Okay, a very nice view. If you can depict it, you can. That's like this alone gives you half mark extra. Right. So this is what this aspirant was referring to when she has written here. Plain gables and rectangular hall indicates primitive stages of masonry. So this is the cave architecture that you find in Bihar, in Barabar and Nagarjuna caves. There, the cave architecture is very simple. When you look at the images, you simply find that a mountain is there, an opening, a door has been excavated, and when you enter into the door, you find a plain hall, a rectangular hall, which is nicely, smoothly finished. There is nothing elaborate inside. But whereas you look at this cave architecture, this is the cave in Karle. You have octagonal shaped pillars, you have nice bulbous capitals. Over that, you have some statues. Then you have a ribbed structure, you have a stupa inside. This is all next generation of cave architecture. Right? So, drawing this kind of a very simple cave architecture diagram will again be helpful in getting some additional marks. So that is what I meant by whenever there's a question on architecture, sculptures, if possible, try to be diagrammatic. And last aspect is mention specific references. Look at the references here. So this is a question on discuss the different regional variations in temple building architectural styles followed in different parts of India, for which the student has written specific examples. In Bundelkhand, when it comes to the Chandela built structures, the Khajuraho temples, which is called as the Kandariya Mahadev temple. There, what kind of structure is followed? She has written here. In Odisha, in Lingaraja temple, what features do we observe? Similarly, this student has also done the same. Ghiyasuddin tomb of Tughlaq was made of red sandstone. That's very correct. Unlike Khalji's, these were sloping structures. Very correct. Okay. The Tughlaqabad fort contains sloping walls, underground cellars. That's very correct. Kirki Mosque, known for its multiple domes. So, as you can see, the aspirant, he is not simply saying Tughlaq architecture, 4 points, sloping wall, multiple domes. Okay. true arch. That's not the points alone that is being written. He is also indicating in which structure what kind of an aspect is actually seen. That is what I mean by specificity of references. Alright. So this sums up my ideas about what makes for a good art and culture answer. So make sure that these four aspects will be there in your answer that you write after reading any material for art and culture. Alright. So now coming to the last aspect, make your preparation lasting. Okay, how do you make it lasting? You read a content, you feel lazy about writing it down. Whatever time you have read, reading the content is waste of time. You will not be able to recollect it later. But let's say you have read this 30 pages of A.L. Basham on arts, right? The document that I have shared on the cloud. Let's say you have read it. After you have read it, if you can only make notes for 10 pages out of that, or 5 pages, whatever you have appreciated out of that reading, right? So whatever you are able to imbibe from that reading, if you can only make and compile notes, right? You only have 5 themes for art and culture, so it's not going to be a very difficult task to prepare notes. All you need to do is spend some 15 days, leisurely take 3 days per every theme. I'm very sure in 15 days, in 2 weeks, you will become very good with having read the right material for art and culture and having made usable notes out of that, right? So make sure your preparation becomes meaningful. It should not be something that you have spent 20-30 minutes, so make your preparation meaningful. It should not be something where you have read for 15 days and after that, after 1 month, everything that you have read has gone waste. You have forgotten things, no? Right? So monthly once or 2 months once after you have made your notes, just randomly face some questions, randomly face some art and culture questions. Try to see if you're able to recollect your points or not. Right? You have a lot of test series on the internet. Okay, or you subscribe for any test series, or you use previous year's questions. It could be anything. Just that taking a test should allow you to once again come back to your notes. That's what I mean by use tests to revisit your notes, and not only revisiting them, also to revise. Okay, revise them. Also, what do I mean by revise? Revising means maybe now after you have faced a new question, you may feel that there is some other gap in your preparation. You feel that more content is needed. So now you would go and you would strengthen with more reading. So once that reading is done, now add that also to your notes. Right? So this is what you have to do. And when it comes to architecture, when it comes to sculptures, try to look at images. Simply don't read it from your notes. Okay, Kandariya Mahadev temple in Khajuraho has so 5 important features. No, look at that on internet. What is Kandariya Mahadev temple? What is Panchayatan style? What is Shikara? What is Artha Mandapa? Why? What is a raised plinth? These are all the features that you'll come across in your textbook about Kandariya Mahadev temple. Looking at the image will make a permanent impression in your mind. That is what is a strategy to make the preparation lasting, make permanent impressions. Don't have a knee-jerk reading. Okay, simply you have to read art and culture. So today I'm reading art and culture. Tomorrow I'll forget. No, make long-lasting impressions. Okay, and lastly, improve English. English matters more in art and culture than in science and tech, or in geography, or in internal security. More than that, art and culture requires a certain command over certain vocabulary at least. Okay, your vocabulary cannot be very what do you say, very simple and plain. Then it cannot actually rightly convey the message. It cannot rightly convey emotions. Art and culture is like poetry. You need the right words. Okay, only then the grandness of the monuments, only then the nuances of the literature, only then the efforts of the creator can be correctly portrayed. Right? So that comes from reading from the right books, not from Nitin Singhania and for NCRT. NCRT is written for school children. School children are not expected to be very emotional or impressive, or expressive, right? But you, as a civil service aspirant, the more expressive you are, the more rightly you can convey, better will be your marks compared to your peers, right? So that's why improve English. This happens when you read from the correct set of textbooks. Okay, so you may differ with me here. You may even say that, sir, that's not the case with previous year's toppers. They have not referred A.L. Basham. They may not have read from A.L. Basham, but they would have been given a handout which would have been simply a copy paste from A.L. Basham, and they would have read that. Right? No wonder their answers may be able to, their answers would be expressing all those aspects which you can only do when you read A.L. Basham or any other such standard good textbooks. So that's all. So this is all I wanted to convey about art and culture preparation strategies for your mains examination. Right? So keep preparing for the next 10-15 days from whatever I have told you, and at the end of which I'll be making the next subject specific video. All right. Thank you.